Harvard Divinity School.
BRSCC 2026 Student Panel, April 13th, 2026.
My name is Casey Baldwin. I'm a first-year MTS student here at HDS, studying gender, sexuality, and religion with a focus on womanist thought. My dream is to be a writer and public theologian who gets to bring the type of discourse that we are having today to the broader public through literature and conversations like this. So it's really exciting to me to be able to sit here with some of my peers who are doing just that as well. I am going to, in the name of time, allow my peers here to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their work. But I think the hope for this panel is just to sit with some of the students. These are all brilliant emerging scholars, graduating students here at HDS who will be going out into the world in a matter of weeks to bring their work to life. And each of these women represent or approach womanist thought from a very distinct vantage point. So I would love to hear how today's panels landed for each of you. Maia, if you would be willing to get us started, I would love to hear, as an emerging womanist scholar yourself, if there's anything today that challenged, confirmed, or shifted something in your own thinking.
Thank you, Casey. My work sits at the intersection of womanist thought, anthropology, and spiritual care. And I'm really focused on how do we encounter these dark and hard stories in the archives of Black girls? How are Black girls ending up in the archives, and what stories aren't being told? So I'm not going to be able to quote who said it, but someone said earlier, who owns the stories? And I said, that's me. That's my work, is really unpacking who owns the stories and asking questions about that. So going forward in my thesis is what I'm writing about, is questioning who is owning these stories, who is at this table, and what stories are not being told if we listen into the silences. Thinking about Saidiya Hartman. So that's how I'm engaging with, and a challenge that I'm still sitting with and stirring up in me, in my body, is when we talk about structures, institutions, and pipelines. And the last panel, when we talk about mentoring being negotiated, I feel like that's something that is like an unspoken thing. We don't really get told in orientation, this is something you're gonna have to be skilled in. And so what I'm still sitting with is, how do students strategically approach this if this is unknown? If they are the first in their family to be at a Harvard Divinity School, to say womanist, but their family is acting womanish. So I'm still sitting with that, is how do we prepare students better to enter this institution and be strategic with the time that they have here, so that they're not spending time with like, oh, dang, I thought I was getting something here. I actually need to move over here, and it's year 3, right? So how do we prepare, and particularly Black students, and particularly Black women students who may not be going into the church ministry, to do that, where they don't have a direct structural pipeline that looks like the Black church, HDS to the Black church? How are we making sure that those students do not fall within the gaps and into the silence? Once again, their stories being silenced, particularly Black women. So that is what I'm sitting on, and it's still challenging me.
Thank you. Bex, I would love to hear a little bit more about your work and what stood out to you today.
Thank you, Casey. Hi, everyone. I'm Bex. I'm a third-year MDiv, like my peers here. And I study the intersection of art and culture and spirituality. So I'm specifically looking at different artists and how their spirituality informs their creative practice and the work that they create. And I guess what's sticking out to me, or still sitting with me, is this barrel that's the problem, the container. And I am just reflecting on a lot of the naming of harm that happens in the institutions that we enter. And finding myself at a crossroads where I am about to graduate and I'm wondering, do I want to enter this container and get scarred? Is it worth it? That's what's honestly sticking with me right now. And just asking myself if there are other places that are maybe not safe, completely safe from the harm that we are talking about today, but are going to treat me better when I try to create the work that I'm interested in for the people that I'm accountable to.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christy Lindor. I go by she, her pronouns. I am a second year MTS student, specifically focused on Africana diasporic religions here at HDS. And I think there were just so many different moments. I really couldn't encapsulate it in like one soundbite because I took a gift from every single speaker that I heard. So thank you, whether it was Reverend Childs talking about his amazing grandmother and just elevating his ancestors in this space, whether it was the discussions we just had, let's say with Pastor Law and the other amazing scholars, whether it was Reverend Valerie Bridgman, who not only held space from a womanist lens, she held it where another individual in the room, I think she's left, a student, felt comfortable, felt safe enough to bring her religious background. And she talked about Black Kali. There were just so many different gifts. And I want to expand, if it's okay. I know I'm in a room full of womanists. It's okay if I expand the theological conversation today, I'm asking. It's okay. So I want to bring in some other non-Christian theologians into this space to which I stand on shoulders on. I want to start, there's one in the room, Dr. Tracy Hucks. I want to just bring her into this space. I want to name some others, whether it's Ianifa, Dr. Funlayo Wood. She focuses on Ifa traditions. I want to bring in Reverend Dr. Amy Victoria Adkins, who's done amazing work on the Black Madonna. I want to bring in Dr. Kaidi Brown, who's done outstanding work in Jamaican Revival and Spiritual Baptist. I want to bring in Dr. Ayudeji Okunagi in Condomble and Ifa Islamic traditions. And I also want to bring in Dr. Meredith Francis Lopkin Tobias, who's done amazing work in Burkina Faso traditions from a womanist lens. So I want to bring all of them into this space with me. Because we did say that womanist is a space of inclusion. I know for me, not only I'm a womanist, I'm also a 5th generation priestess and healer. And so for me, I took everything from the various different things that was shared. I think one thing that I'll just kind of end on before I pass it back, one of the last panels mentioned the idea of embracing differences. Differences should not be deficiency. Differences should not be denial. And so I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share in this space.
Thank you so much, Christy. We've been in a room today full of people who speak this language, who speak our language, but each of you is doing work that reaches far beyond these walls through art, ministry, healing, scholarship. I was really thrilled to hear the theme of accessibility surrounding this discourse come up a lot throughout the day. I really loved what both Reverend Dr. Blackman and Reverend Dr. Bridgman said about the need to make sure that these conversations remain and become increasingly accessible. So I would love to hear a little bit about how each of you are thinking about carrying these conversations to the people you're accountable to and to the people in your communities.
Thank you. I think that question connects with what I was mentioning earlier about trying to figure out what spaces are best suited for my well-being, but also the type of work that I'm interested in creating. And so I have my thesis is exploring the work of two artists, M. Norbezi Phillip and Torkwase Dyson, who exist at this intersection between faith, spirituality, academia, and art and culture. And I think that I really wanted to highlight the faith and spirituality aspect of their work because I don't necessarily see that talked about as much. There's this way that like different institutions have their own languages and their own discourses and the things that they talk about, and there's no like intersectional I guess, understanding of what's really happening or what are the stakes of this work. And so when I read M. Norbezi Phillip's book-length poem Zong, I was like, this is a spiritual text, right? But we normally, in literary spaces, it's read as a work of experimental poetry. And I'm like, this is more than that. And so I'm interested in how we can have conversations about spirituality and like what faith practices are informing people's cultural work and their cultural practice or their artistic practice, and talking more clearly about how religion and spirituality is informing the actual form of an artwork, which I don't think is talked about as much. And I think that there is this kind of like taboo to talk about spirituality and religion in certain spaces, and the art world is definitely one of those spaces. But if you read artists' own reflections about their work, there's so much spirituality and faith informing how they approach their creative practice. So I'm really trying to like kind of live in all of these worlds without feeling like I have to compromise on any of the rigor in each of those spaces.
Thank you for your question, Casey. Actually, Dr. Stacey Floyd Thomas's last remarks reminded me of what you're talking about is staying accountable to the people you say you serve. And in my practice, I physically need to be in close proximity. I need that closeness. And if I'm talking about something I learned in class or a piece of my thesis and it's not landing by the facial expressions, maybe I need to rewrite it. You know, like my interlocutors is right here, Bex, right? My interlocutor is my grandmother. When I'm writing, I'm writing with them in mind and with them in conversation. And I learned from other womanist scholars and my good friend Bex here is the power of a footnote. Okay, I did not know the power of a footnote prior, but there is power in the footnote. And I think okay, and I think that is one way of staying accountable is citing those discredited knowledges. And come on, KBD. And this is the training here. So citing those things where I was like, I kind of would place in my writing as, oh, everybody knows this. And it's like, no, certain people know it, and this is our type of knowledge, and this deserves a citation as well. So that's one way in practice that I remain accountable. And also in relation to stories is what stories drive me to my calling. That I have to return to that constantly whenever I'm in the institution where things do get a little sticky, you know, where you have to have to be in that unknown space that was mentioned earlier, where you're responding to the call. You can't see the fullness and the vastness of the vision, but you have to stay steadfast in the vision. And what holds me is those stories and those legacies and those lineages of people that I feel like, you know, inspire me. So those are the things that keep me grounded and accountable. And, you know, I stay in my vernacular as a girl that was born and raised in Philly. You know, I make sure that language is translatable. So that, because it was somebody who did the same, Reverend Ofoy right there, who did that for me, where she was stood in her accountability to her community, where I seen that and I was like, okay, at what's that thing called? We don't got time. But when you first come to convocation. Convocation. And Reverend Dr. Ofori was at my convocation in undergrad. And she had on her pink robe from Harvard. Well, I call it pink, but maybe it's a little more crimson. And I said, I want that. I didn't know who she was. I just knew she was I said, I want that. I'm going to get that. And hey, I'm here. I don't have the pink robe, but I do have a 3-stripe robe, the MDiv coming. So, it's making sure that also in your body you're legible to those people you say you're accountable, that you show up in that space. And that's how I want to remain.
So when I think about what keeps me accountable, I want to start back to the story of how I got here. I just by profession, I spent a career as a management consultant and specifically in business. And I want to say in 2020, in some time, I got the divine call, and I started to have a spiritual awakening. And one of the things as I prayed and asked, like, well, what is it that I'm supposed to do if I'm going to leave corporate America? Like, what is it that I'm supposed to do? That then, led me to starting a business. That then led me to thinking about divinity school, which was like completely left field from anything I had done in the last 20 years. So fast forward, decided about, divinity school, then decided about coming specifically to Harvard. And then when I got here, I was like, okay, Lord, you called me to divinity school. This is not my forte. But what is it that I'm supposed to do with this? Like, how am I going to marry two very different worlds that I'm in, and also answering the call of my ancestors? And a quote that was said earlier really stood out to me as I'm hearing and I'm remaining accountable to that call, when Reverend Childs talked about remain in plain sight and dismantle the system. That quote really stood with me, and it stood with me because at the end of his talk, he mentioned Black women don't look to others for liberation; they look to themselves. And when I think about the work that I'm going to do, I'm actually next month. I'm actually opening up a female empowerment and healing center specifically for Black women here in Boston, rooted in Afrocentric practices. Thank you. And it's called the Sacred Rose Center. To me, a lot of the work that I plan on doing as I stand at my Watchpost is ensuring that in that space, in those 4 walls of that center, I allow women to feel whole. I allow them to heal. I allow them to be able to know that they in themselves have the power to liberate whatever it is that they are running from, whatever is holding them back. And I'm specifically focusing and centering it on Black women because sometimes we find that when we talk about liberation as Black women, there's this idea that people start to get scared. They start to get, it's like, whoa, what are we talking about here? Here, I'm specifically naming in this center that we'll be doing work not only on self-healing, self-love, healing between mother and daughter, healing between sorority sisters, but also economic healing. How do we think about money? How do we look and start to create the mindsets that really liberate us on all dimensions? And that's the Watchpost I stand in. I'm holding myself accountable. This is the first time I've ever said this publicly, that I'm doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy and Maya and Bex. I want to cut it because in the interest of time, honor everyone's time this afternoon. But the last question that I had, and one that I, again, won't be able to offer to the panelists, but I would love to offer to everyone, is really just an invitation to reflect on and find space and to continue the dialogue and sit in conversation about whatever it is that is feeling most urgent to you as you are leaving today. I think we had such a meaningful, full day of womanist and Black feminist reflection, and there's so much to talk about and so much to grow from, and it would be such a loss if we just left it here. So with that said, I think I'm passing the mic, Maya? To Elijah to wrap us up, but thank you all so much.
There are just a few words of gratitude I'd like to share before we conclude today's events. To Professor Douglas and the Womanist Enclave, simply thank you. Your time with us today was more than just an academic conference, but a spiritual impartation. We appreciate each of you for the reminder that we have to take up space and provide for the future that we are envisioning. To our HDS community friends and guests, Harambee thanks you for being in community with us today as we stand at the Watchpost. It is our hope that today's conversation will provoke us to see prophetically, speak clearly, and stand firm in the work for a more just future. To the Planning Committee, I want to thank each of you for your work in curating today's experience. Your engagement has helped us to approach the future with critique, clarity, and courage. To our BRSC convening chair, I stand in great gratitude of your leadership and friendship. Your display of great commitment to You display a great commitment to community building, and without that, Harambee would not be the same. Last but not least, to our dean, thank you. Thank you for your steady guidance and thoughtful support in helping us to bring this conference to life. Your trust in our vision and leadership gave us the confidence to plan boldly and execute with excellence. We are deeply grateful for your partnership and for the care you have shown every step of the way. Thank you, Dean Frederick. Also, thank you to the Office of Student Life, led by Katie Capranera. Everything that you see here today is a product of her office, and we thank you so much, Katie. Now is my understanding that Katie has something to present.
I can't speak as eloquently as Elijah or anyone else here today, but greetings all. I'm Katie Capranera. I'm the Director of Student Life here at HDS, and I just want to take a brief moment to give an extra special acknowledgement and recognition to our student leaders of this convening. This is a purely volunteer effort on top of their scholarly pursuits, their coursework, their field education, their ministry responsibilities, and all else that comes with being a student here at HDS. So I do have small tokens of appreciation for the BRSCC Planning Committee, so please meet me up here by these bags. For Maya, Elijah, Adesike, Naomi, Casey, Christy, Candace, Armand, and Caleb, thank you. Thank you to the BRSCC and Harambee as a whole.
Sponsored by Office of Student Life at Harvard Divinity School.
Copyright 2026, the President and Fellows of Harvard College.